Welcome to the Mobile Games Playbook in association with Liftoff. Join us as we uncover the latest trends in user acquisition, monetization, and mobile game design.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Games Playbook. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. This is a podcast all about what makes a great mobile game, what is and isn't working for mobile game designers and mobile game marketeers, as we'll be talking about today, and all the latest trends. I'm your host, Jon Jordan, and joining me today, talking about mobile growth marketing and other things, we have Saikala Sultanova. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. Thanks for having me.
We talk a lot about UA, but it's sort of interesting in the sort of discussion. You want to talk about growth marketing, which is sort of you think is a slightly more different thing than UA. We're going to sort of get into that a little bit. And we're also going to talk a bit about the difference between game marketing and non-game marketing. But in order to sort of set the scene, I think it would be a good thing, because you've had quite an interesting career, and that's sort of taken, that sort of set up what we're going to be talking about in this podcast. So do you want to spend some time just telling us what you've been up to in your career recently?
Yeah, so what I've been up to over maybe 14 years or so, I've been helping mobile games and apps grow at places like Ubisoft, Product Madness, Ace Games, and some early stage startups as well. I've learned how to, bring teams together and solve real life, real world growth challenges, because with every product that goes live out there is so much preparation needs to be done. And whether it's launching a major IP, building data infrastructure together with data teams, or figuring out fresh ways of how to tackle new markets, new problems that might come up, whether it's with measurement or creative production or anything like that. And these days I work as a consultant advisor for mobile companies. And in my spare time, I am building connections through UA Society and learning from inspiring people. UA Society is a non-profit org. Myself and a few others work on it every year to put events together here in London, and also this year we did in South Korea as well, in Seoul.
You also have a video series as well, which is sort of I guess related to that. So tell us a little bit about that. It's always good to, don't be shy.
I watch so many videos, so many podcasts out there, and it's like, I'm curious, how do people do it actually? So I wanted to kind of see and experiment myself, interview interesting people that I meet, sometimes not very easy to find time with or whatever, and they have interesting stories, they have inspiring stories, they have challenges and failures, that they have a journey in their life, personal or business. And the idea was to connect to those people, give them a platform where they can share their story. And at the end of each episode, I asked them to give their 2 cents of advice to whoever's listening, and hear what they have, their stories, wins, failures, and lessons learned, and what could they do better next time, if they have next time another chance. So anyway, that's me pretty much experimenting. I don't know how to do podcasts, so
join the club. Yeah, no, exactly. We just have a good conversation. So good. Thanks for that introduction. You can see you sort of, we'll pull out some of your expertise hopefully over the next sort of 30 minutes or so. But we're gonna start off. I guess with something sort of quite specific, and we've spoken in the podcast. Like, sort of UA is obviously a topic that we talk about a lot in various contexts. I don't think we've ever spoken about sort of how you sort of do sort of pilot testing and user acquisition, which is obviously, I guess, the first time in which you're sort of introducing a product and trying to find an audience, and that really sets the scene for, I guess when I think about user acquisition, you sort of think about these big campaigns and sort of the sort of more established stuff. But I guess setting the parameters for how you're going to find an audience for your product is actually one of the important things, because if you sort of head off in the wrong direction, then obviously you're going to find it difficult to fulfill your goal. So when you're working with teams, when you're thinking about starting sort of UA campaigns, what place do you start? What have you found works best?
Well, everyone starts testing and everyone goes with quant first, because in performance marketing, which is also my strongest background, is we believe that data tells you the truth. And that's truth, but partially. Because obviously, and this is what lots of gaming and apps companies, they go with a product and they launch a product and it's okay, who is going to like my product? And then some companies start with hypotheses and they do qualitative testing first to understand what, or maybe interviews, surveys, and trying to understand where is the product market fit? Is my product hypothesis is a good fit to this market? Can I make it a business? So once that's all of that is done, I always like to start with a clear hypothesis. What am I actually trying to prove or learn? And in pilot testing, something a bit earlier than the, let's say, rollout testing, work closely with teams, set up initial campaigns with controlled budgets and focusing on well-defined segments, whether it's creative variation or different art concepts or whatever it may be. The key milestones are, number one is getting clean data early so that you can read and see, if it's showing you some indication. Then two, hitting statistical significance. Because if you see great results and it's just like, I don't know, 5 conversions or whatever, that doesn't make sense, right? You need something that's going to scale as a business. And then 3, understanding user behavior, not just from the surface level metrics, but also how does it go a little bit further and how is it going to help you make decisions. And you're going to have multiple questions afterwards and follow-ups with the wider team. And it's important to understand, to make sure there's enough data, to make sure that you have only one hypothesis or you're answering one question. And then that's that. And then once you have the results, share with the wider team in the company. It doesn't matter if it's marketing or product or not, it doesn't matter. Everyone should understand and learn. And because that way you get each other on board and understand and can make a joint decision, what's the next step.
Interesting, you sort of mentioned things like sort of user interviews and stuff. Obviously that doesn't really sort of scale. So do you still think that's something people should be doing for every product, just to sort of get some anecdotal sort of ideas? Because obviously you say the big data is sort of where a lot of the focus is. So maybe people think these days sort of that sort of qualitative sort of talking to potential users doesn't really stack up in the same way. It's maybe not so actionable, but do you think it still has a sort of a value in sort of getting an idea of how you're going to be doing marketing?
The application of it, there's twofold. One, in earlier stages, is product market fit, and is predominantly on product to figure out whether their idea could have, legs to walk on and become a business. That's one. But then when it comes to marketing, people often jump straight away into quant, getting enough data, statistical significance, that I mentioned earlier. And that's the correct way of doing it because it's something measurable, something you can rely on, and something that you can make conclusions from. However, one of the things that I've learned, and I've always been a quant person, one of the things that I've learned, and once you run all the quant tests, it gives you an answer. This works, this doesn't work. This works, this doesn't work. Yes, no, yes, no. It never tells you why. So the qualitative part gives you the answer or can give you an indication of why. I'll give you one example. When I was in one of the previous companies, we were running TV campaign. To prepare to run TV campaign and to go big on a big screen in the US, for example, you need to do lots of preparation and testing, and it's very expensive. So stakes are high and the expectations are high from a business as well. So how can you make sure that everything is as optimal as it can be, not just with your channel mix, placements, day parting, the length of the creative or anything, but how can you make sure that actually people in the US, your target audience, is going to engage with it, is going to hear the voiceover, is going to enjoy your creative and actually follow up with whether it's direct response or just search by themselves to go and then download your product and play the game. So we did all the testing, we prepared everything we've done. And then there was this gut feeling. Something in our creative that I don't know, but it's just this, I need to have another reassurance. And we've done the quant testing like 3 times and everything checks out apart from that gut feeling. So the advice was to go and ask people, what do they really think? And it was eye-opening because it was eye-opening. Literally, we were asking people who play competitive games, our games, and similar other things to watch the video trailer and tell us how they feel, what they think, what do they understand, is it clear? And the comments that we got, that voiceover was annoying. They're like, yeah, that's great. Here could be better, here could be better. But the voiceover was annoying. And this is something, you know, I couldn't understand straight away because I'm not American, I don't live there. So therefore, for me, it's just like, yeah, it sounds good. And then a couple of other bits and bobs that we realized after listening to people's feedback, qualitative feedback, and it's literally the sample size was less than 10 people. Exactly. And then it's like, okay, bingo, now it makes sense. So we went back to drawing board, adjust the creative, made it better, tested again, and only then went live.
You say it's amazing that you're going to have to talk to 200 people. That's going to be quite a big effort to do that. You're saying just start with a few people, maybe not for every product, but you might get that feedback quite quickly that everyone's saying the same thing.
Yeah, but then you see, it's a different application because for product, you need it a bit earlier, interviewing some smaller sample size and getting that quality information. But for marketing, it's about the application scalability. When it's something like big TV, big screen, then the stakes are high and you have to do every kind of testing to make sure that the money you spend is going to be worth it.
There is still a place for those sort of interviews, but obviously the main thing is getting the data, getting the sort of the quantitative stuff. So when you're looking at like a test plan, what's a good test plan? What sort of things are you looking for? Obviously, there's tons of different KPIs that you could be using. What's the sort of stuff that you think is sort of best practice?
Well, typical solid test plan is mostly about clarity. You want to have your test objectives, audience segmentation, split, creative variance, channel mix, timing, you name it. It's all the same thing. It's not rocket science, and we know it for more than a decade. And defining metrics is pretty much similar across the board. In gaming, it's CPI, retention, day 1, 3, 7, ROAS, LTV, PLTV as well. Then from my recent experience working with non-gaming companies as well, they don't call it CPI. For them, it's CAC, customer acquisition cost, because it's not just app launch, it's a little bit more registration and maybe some onboarding with paywalls and things like that. And the most important thing is defining the goal that you're aiming to work towards and then applying all of that. Also, make it a bit of a habit and go through due diligence. Let's say that if there are the data gaps, if there is an attribution logic issue or anything to do with goals, that projections that you received from product based on whatever information they found online, or sometimes they do have good information, but sometimes they don't, and maybe our information is outdated. It's important to run a sanity check and flag these things because everyone is an expert in their field. And growth marketing responsibility is to make sure that the latest and most accurate information, whatever's available, is communicated to the whole wider team.
It's just interesting that a couple of times already you've sort of come back to there's what the sort of the growth marketing team are doing or the UA team, and they're sort of getting all this data and stuff. But in and of itself, that's not useful unless it's sort of feeding back into the sort of wider organisation. The things has to be joined up. You can't just have a great UA team who's doing all the work and coming up with these numbers, and then if they're not getting support or if they can't talk to the rest of the product team, then I guess it's a bit sort of useless.
It is useless, but it's also it makes it much harder for both teams because let's make an example hypothetically. Product team thinks growth team, I don't know, do black magic or whatever with algorithms and bidding and whatnot, which is not true because there is no black magic. And then, marketing team don't speak enough to product and engage on expectations and giving enough information on what reality is. And then this is when misalignment happens. Because it's what I've learned from past experience, good or bad, it's really, really important just to have another conversation and align on expectations and clearly, explicitly explain what expectations from both sides are and then align, because most of the times they're not aligned because both teams think different things and then the other team thinks something else. And it's really important to come in a middle ground because nobody can have their cake and eat it. it's going to be a compromise on every single part to come to a joint agreement so that you can shake hands and go live.
So clearly another part of sort of doing this sort of A/B testing, or there's more complicated multivariate testing as well. What are your sort of views on that? I guess sort of, sort of A/B testing, sort of everyone sort of has a good idea of that, and is that a little bit outdated now? Are these sort of new, more complex ways of testing, are they sort of taking over?
In growth marketing, or let's say advertising, UA, whatever you call it, I'm a fan of simple things. Simple A/B testing will give an answer quick enough, and it's a yes or no, basically. And it's also a bit more cost effective. And then you can move on, because time is the most important currency you have. Especially if you're an early stage startup, you have your run rate, time is the most expensive thing you have. And of course, multivariable testing is possible, and it's more complex and sophisticated and looks cool, whatever. But you do that when you have a lot more money to spend on advertising or marketing testing in general, because multivariable testing is more complex, but it just takes a lot more money.
In this early phase, sort of have sort of one question that goes back to sort of having it simple, because I guess very easy you just get overwhelmed with all this sort of data that's coming in, and a lot of it sort of, you can change one variable and then that moves the other variable the wrong way, and then you sort of find yourself in a bit of a pickle.
But you know what, the classic thing that happens all the time, and I've seen that in gaming all the time, and I didn't know that other industries do the same, and now I've learned that other industries do the same. Greediness. Oh, we're going to run this test, and we're going to bring these 20,000 users, and we're going to analyze. And with these 20,000 users, or let's say 10, whatever, we're going to answer question A, B, C, and it's like, it's not going to give you the same sample size. And probably for testing something like this, you need a different mix of network sample size, and maybe a different country platform, and all of these kind of things. And then people go like, but why can't we just do that? Because other companies do it. It's like, okay, other company is not doing it the right way. Because if you want to have a clear, conclusive answer, does it work? Does it not work? And maybe why sometimes, if you do a bit more research, but work doesn't work. And then you need to have just one thing. And it's really hard to stick to it, because then marketing and product teams will start multiplying questions and costs of finding answers to those. It becomes a lot. But this is when everyone needs to prioritize which questions are the most important and the most impactful on your product launch or making it a business. Because some questions are just not that useful.
And sort of coming to the end of this, sort of starting off the sort of marketing, the sort of pilot testing of UA, what are the sort of key learnings you think people should be aware of, and the sort of the mistakes that you're seeing the most, that people, if they're not thinking ahead, they sort of naturally fall into these sort of errors?
One of the most common mistakes is testing too many variables at once. And as I just said, it's greediness. This muddles the results, and you may end up with no conclusive answer, and then you lost time and you have to do it again. Attribution gaps, skipping pre-launch tech checklists, launching without QAing your advertising flow as well, because just having product ready and having your campaigns ready doesn't really mean that one of the campaigns is going to fail because something has happened with the configs, or I don't know, and it's very, very common, right? Or sometimes people forget to put the payment method into their ad account or whatever. So to make sure all of these small checks and are done, and make sure that you communicate results and caveats clearly to the wider team, so that nobody in the team, in other teams as well, thinks it's a black magic, because it's not. It's just a very tedious, repetitive kind of work. I mean, thanks to, it's 2025, so now there's lots of machine learning, there's lots of automation. I'm going to say the AI word as well, which is a bit helpful for some of the mundane work, but still, there's still lots of things that we have to do ourselves. And doing the last tiny, annoying, small, mundane checks is always helpful.
That's sort of the first bit of the podcast today, looking at that, and now we're going to sort of move on. Again, something you sort of mentioned, you spent a lot of time in games, also advising sort of non-gaming apps, and you've worked in non-gaming apps as well. So obviously we generally talk about games in the podcast, but interesting to sort of see how the other side lives and maybe sort of learn a bit from that as well. So I guess the core skills that sort of you've been working on over the last 14 years are broadly, work the same in non-gaming apps. I guess it's the apps themselves obviously have a sort of, I guess, a slightly depending on what the app is. I mean, they can have very different, but there's a sort of different use case in terms of, obviously from banking to social apps to travel or whatever. What can you tell us about that difference?
I thought there would be a lot of differences. And when I've tried to work with some of the projects, one of them was health, mental health, another one fitness, and then one of the latest ones, fintech here in the UK. And I found out the foundation of operational growth marketing, data-driven decision-making, creative production, ad tech integration, reporting and budget management translates directly. And the marketing mix with ad networks is copy-paste, pretty much. There are some differences because non-gaming are a lot more advanced with CRM, and web to app marketing and web in general. They're a lot more advanced, but everything mobile is pretty much copy paste. And I don't think there is no matter industry. Probably e-com would be a lot more different. I haven't worked with e-com yet, but yeah, gaming pushes you to test fast and learn quickly from results. The difference is with, and pivot campaigns with agility, but the difference with those with non-gaming apps, it takes a little bit longer. You need to look at the conversion window that's a little bit longer, whether it's fintech, lifestyle, health, and this is something that is different. Other than that, pretty much everything is recyclable.
And I guess to some degree over the last certainly sort of 10 years, we've had this idea of sort of gamification. So even health and, particularly health really, but even sort of fintech apps that sort of have been influenced by sort of game type sort of features and stuff as well, which probably also plays a little bit into the marketing. So that, they've converged to some degree in some aspects.
In the last couple of years, it became almost like a trend with subscription apps. They want to gamify experience because that brings engagement. And because if it is a subscription app, you pay your monthly subscription or whatever it may be. So the conversion to in-app purchase is not necessary for you because you don't sell single packages all the time. And therefore, one of the most important measurement for you would be the engagement. How often is your app used by your customers? Is it helpful? Is it engaging? Do they feel valued as a customer?
When you've sort of worked on those non-gaming apps compared to the sort of gaming apps, what have you thought are the sort of the opportunities that sort of people who have experience in gaming can sort of bring to a new role if they're trying to sort of do this sort of growth marketing on non-gaming apps? What sort of really shines?
Do you mean what really shines from non-gaming or gaming?
Yeah, well, if people have been working in gaming and trying to say, I've got these transferable skills that I've learned in gaming over the last few years and I can help you with your non-gaming apps, what things do you think really sort of they can leverage?
Quite a lot, actually. I was pleasantly surprised when I tried for the first time. And it is quite a lot. On user acquisition specifically, go-to-market plan is very similar. I would say 70% and 30% is something that is outside of gaming. Then when it comes to creative production, it's exactly the same. The only difference, creative production, testing, and improving iterations and all of that. So it's exactly the same. Channels are exactly the same. Maybe for non-gaming, it's a little bit wider than for gaming, which is great. But the only difference on creative production and testing is the same actually. Creative production, that for non-gaming, static creatives are important. They could be as important as 40 to 50% of the total ad spend. And they convert. And that's pretty good because the way the product is perceived is different. And the level of, let's say, trust or level of information, level of, accuracy is a lot more important. Then what else? Ad tech, attribution, measurement, anything to do with creative labeling, AI tools, pretty much all of that is transferable 100% because, non-gaming apps, they like to have fancy tools as well. So anything to improve their work life and make it more efficient, of course, they're going to utilize that. what are the differences? Yeah, that's pretty much. Reporting is exactly the same. The only thing with non-gaming, they go further down funnel, uh, because CRM is part of the marketing team, and then there is like additional product marketing, web to apps, search, SEO is important. So that becomes a much wider scope, and therefore much longer time and funnel where you need to report for a long period of time and not just regular, I don't know, ROAS or whatever it may be. It's more than that. Uh, but apart from that, I would say probably 75% of what we learn and do every day in gaming is pretty much transferable.
I guess for games, as you say, sort of you have your D1, D7, maybe D30, but games are sort of not always, but often sort of disposable in a way that you would for a lot of non-gaming apps. They just don't have that sort of a bank hopefully having a different sort of long-term sort of relationship with its users than maybe a game where people are just like cycling through games, all the time.
Right? Depends what kind of game. If it is hyper casual, the one that's, has a ROAS target 30 days or 60 maximum, and retention is terrible after that, then of course, yeah, those are throwaway games and they're lots of fun. But then there are some games that people play for years and years, and those are the games may not have advertising in them. And if you already spend $1,000 on that game, buying IP packages and progressing in your level, you want to stick to it, and you might be there for a year or two until something better comes along.
What sort of advice would you give to people who are sort of marketing professionals, UA professionals, and have experience in the games industry? How have you found it working with those two different things? I mean, I guess everyone always thinks games are sort of like the really sort of fun part of the industry, and obviously we probably to some degree agree with that being a gaming podcast. But obviously most of the world is not gaming, and I'm sure there's lots of fun companies who are doing non-gaming apps. So what sort of advice would you give people about that?
I'd say keep an open mind and lean into what makes each vertical unique, because respecting the pace of learning, and don't just assume what worked for games will transfer as is. It wouldn't 100%, but lots of those skills, and if you're curious, are transferable. It's important to find mentors in the industry on both sides, on gaming also, and experiment a lot. Make friends with your analytics and product teams, making sure that you are really into something that matters. Celebrating wins is important, even if it's a small win. Every test you learn something, even if it's a small one, it's really important. And don't be afraid to challenge the playbook, because playbooks get written all the time and they also get outdated all the time. And therefore, refreshing your knowledge is really, really important. And to your comment, actually, that gaming is more fun. Gaming it is more fun. I can say that now. There are less limitations, less boundaries, and you can go a bit, edgy, and you can do stuff according to brand guidelines, or if there are no brand guidelines, even better, yeah. So with fintech, you can't, because you're a regulated market, regulated business. With some of the health apps, you can't as well. It's regulated because you need to make sure the advice or whatever product is communicating to the user that it is to do with your health. You need to be careful. So gaming is more fun. But what else is more fun right now and trending is, among subscription apps, the AI apps. AI face apps, so lots of other, even podcast making apps and a bunch of other things. So those, I think, are on the rise already. And I think I'll be looking forward to learning from them, because I think very quickly they're going to be much better than gaming.
Get out of there. But it's like you say, no matter how, obviously you're very experienced in this, but there's always new stuff coming up. You always have to be learning. Obviously, the more experience you have, the better sort of foundation you have, and maybe you can understand what the important sort of new things are. But it's never a case of just sort of sitting back and going, well, I've done this for 10 years, so I just keep doing the same old thing.
It's okay for some, and it's okay too, because we need those kind of people also. You can't just have 100% of your team or 100% of your company always wandering to wild. You need to have a diversity of different thoughts and people and culture, and it's important to have a bit of everyone. Somebody needs to do the mundane thing every day, and you need those people. And somebody's comfortable with that, and somebody's not. And I think the most important thing is to stay curious and keep learning.
Good advice. Well, thank you so much for your time. That's really fascinating. We covered a lot of different stuff there. I think there were some good sort of headline things. You're just not a team on your own. You sort of have to talk to your entire team, not just the UA team, and keep things simple, certainly in the early stages, and keep learning, keep curious. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's been a pleasure. And thanks to you for watching, listening, however you are consuming the podcast. Remember, every episode we are delving into what's going on with mobile games, which is increasingly sort of expansive in sort of the topics that we cover, and sort of having to be curious about it because it's all changing all the time. So don't miss out, do subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.